So tonight's webinar is all about that. It's about design, it's about areas, it's about the ability to be able to get out there and start to capitalise on what is already a runaway train in some of these areas. Now, to help me out on that, I actually have a dear friend of mine who I have known for quite a number of years now. Now, this gentleman that I'm going to introduce to you, he's won more awards than you can fit on a wall, seriously. And on top of that, he's somebody who all the big boys come to when they want some advice. They come to him and say, how can we redesign this this subdivision? You know, the subdivision's not working, we need to get more out of it, da-da-da. How can we increase our yields? How can we best tap the market? How can we do this? How can we do that? He's an author. He's written books on the subject. He's traipsed all around America and picked up design concepts and trends and all that sort of thing, and he really is one of the absolute market leaders in the real estate field here in Australia. Now, of course, the gentleman I'm talking about is Mr. Kevin Dewdney from LJ Hooker Land Marketing. Kevin, are you on the line?
Good evening, Dibna. How are you?
Very, very well. Kevin, you might have to speak up there a little bit. You're a little bit faint.
No problem. Is that better?
That's much better. So,
no problem.
Thank you for coming on the line. We've got your pretty face here on the screen, and you're at LJ Hooker Land Marketing, which is in Queensland, and one of the things that I spoke about when we did our national tour recently to members was the huge opportunities that existed in Queensland. So I thought it'd be a great opportunity to bring you on board and hear your version of what's going on, and perhaps how some people can capitalise on that and really pick up on the yields that are really up for grabs up here in Queensland.
Well, happy to be there for you.
Excellent. Now, I've got a screenshot here, which I couldn't even fit everything in, of all your awards. You've been, you've been the top salesman for God knows how many years all across Australia. You concentrate mainly on land, but obviously for my investors, what you're helping them out with is putting together the whole package of positive cash flow and all of that kind of stuff. But I tell you what, this is a market that you know backwards. Just give us a little bit of a background on yourself.
Sure, no problem. Dibna, I've been with LJ Hooker now for some 30 years.
Holy dilly.
I've managed to sell in the last 10 years a little over 15,000 blocks across Australia. and for that, I've managed to pick up a few awards, as you said. In fact, we picked up another 5 last month, which takes our total to nearly 200 now. And,
no wonder I can't fit them on a screen.
It could be that problem. But along the way, perhaps my hobby is coming up with clever designs for our developers across Australia. And we trialled one a couple of years ago that I mentioned to you that you know about, which is the Smarter Smaller Home. And we had to build that in a hangar because no developer would allow us to build that with the covenant issue, and no council would allow us to build it because of the small lot code. Yet when we built it in the hangar, since then over 1,000 have been built across Australia, particularly in the mining camps.
Tell me, now just before we get on to the Smarter Smaller Homes, tell me about the book that you were commissioned to write about, building trends and those sorts of things, and how the trip around America really started to consolidate with what was happening here in Australia.
Well, I was invited, Dibna, to a study tour, which ended up lasting for a whole year, and I ended up as a guest last year in the Scottish Housing Expo on behalf of 30 architects and 30 builders to see what the future of housing was for Europe. And as a result of that, I've been commissioned to write a couple of books. One I wrote was The Complete Guide to Hillside Living some time ago, and at the moment we're in the process of writing The Return of the Great Australian Dream, which is still in that typing madly at night phase.
Okay, so as you can see, Kevin is definitely a leader in the field. Now, I've got a picture on the screen here, Kevin, of one of your homes that was built in the hangar. Just tell us as to why that was the case and what you're doing with it, and perhaps talk a little bit about the little estate that you've kind of put together there about all of these innovative designs and things.
Sure. The logic, Dipner, in creating the Smarter, Smaller Home was after I came back from Europe and North America, I'd noticed the trending down of house sizes. And so my desire was to build a two-story home that only covered 60 square metres of land and allowed us to build it at an affordable level that would rent at a very high yield. And as a result of that, we could take single blocks in Brisbane, such as 20 metres wide, and put two houses on it immediately, and still have 1.5 metre setbacks from both boundaries, so they stood as single dwelling houses.
Mm-hmm. So why did you have to build it in a hangar?
Well, when I came back to Australia, the average covenant size when I arrived back 2 years ago was around about 180 to 220 square metres, and the total size of the Smarter Home was only 60 square metres down and 60 square metres up, so no covenant would allow me to build it. And secondly, being new and innovative, especially with its embodied footprints and other things, no small lot code of the 141 councils would allow us to build it in their council electorates. So we thought if we built it in a shed, perhaps some network might take it up, and A Current Affair did. It crashed their website. The rest is history, 1,000 homes, particularly in northwestern Australia and in the mining communities, because we could either build it off-site and deliver it in, or build it on-site fairly quickly.
Goodness me. Well, there's a few pictures here. I've got some more pictures of the property actually under construction. Tell us a little bit about the types of materials that are used and the the fabrication of it all. Like, how quickly does it come together and all those sorts of things?
Well, two options. My favourite was to build it on-site locally because it kept the money in the local community, and it was no more or less expensive to do it that way than it was to build it in the factory, with the exception of places like Karratha and very isolated sectors where it was more logical to build it and pop it on the back of a truck. The materials we chose were low-embodied energy and very green because we felt that was a trend that was going upwards, and therefore we chose lightweight materials, and that allowed us a quicker build, around about 10 weeks to build normally on site. Mm-hmm. And it was built to a grid system, so it meant that we did not throw anything in the bin. There was less wastage. 10% of the cost of a house goes into the bin these days.
Goodness me. You also were very conscious of, wasted space and that sort of thing. Just talk a little bit about that and the design process.
Well, what we decided there was no tilers were harmed in the use of this home because we didn't want to use materials that were problematical in areas where you required high trade area skills. Mm-hmm. So we used different products, and in smarter ideas, we approached a local manufacturer to create a full-size, queen-size bed that would drop down out of the wall from a seamless location in the home. And for $1,600, you create a beautiful room that 1 minute might be a television or media room, and the next minute you've got yourself a private bedroom for guests.
So spare bedroom.
We also killed all dinosaur rooms, which meant no formal lounge, no formal dining, and everywhere we could, we looked at multi-use of space.
And no hallways.
No hallways. That's another 15% shot just there. And more importantly, no garage. It was only carport. A garage is $36,000. A carport is $3,500. As yet, I haven't been able to get rent from a car.
So, I mean, you're obviously talking investors' language there when you start talking lower cost for higher yield. But you didn't compromise on the energy rating either.
No, we went beyond it. We went to 6 stars, and the impact was so great on the Queensland government that 6 months after releasing it, they cancelled all covenants in Queensland. So that was a war in itself waiting to happen. But now we still have that situation. You do not have to comply with a covenant, provided it is of a material that is acceptable for star rating.
And how do you go from a cyclone rating perspective?
The house could be built as comfortably in Papua New Guinea as it is in Brisbane. It's just a question of the methodology of how you brace it, that's all.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've got
no problem.
We've got a couple of pictures here about the model and the design, where you've got the living area predominantly downstairs, a nice little balcony kind of area, and in this particular design we've got 3 bedrooms upstairs. Is that the typical design that you use?
No, that was just to cover on 60 square metres. If you looked at that plan, you can easily punch out that living area downstairs right out to where the patio shows, and that gives you upstairs 4 bedrooms and a rumpus room upstairs, and it extends the living dining area downstairs automatically. So it's very extendable, and if you want to make it a duplex, you can take the western wall and simply add it to that side if you've got a very short frontage. But if you want to freestand them, they only take up 7 metres of width, and the rest of the balance of the 10 metres is setbacks from the boundaries, so they can stand freely on their own blocks.
So, I mean, I'm looking at a picture now of the duplex as you described it, with the, you know, then they look very smart and very modern side by side there, and then another one which is actually 3 stories high, which I assume has got garages and things underneath, has it?
Yeah, what had happened there, Dipna, was when I actually built the house in the shed, you'll notice the picture is of a flat roof, smarter, smaller home.
That's right, yes.
The reason we did it as a flat roof was 2 reasons. One was we used one was it was a bondel roof, which meant we had a greater energy saving, and the other one was, yes, I ran out of shed height. And so it was the shortest 2-story in the history of Australia. So when we had a flood problem in Nudgee, we were able to build it as a 3-story and not go past the 8.5 metre height. Okay. And that allowed us to solve the flood home issues.
So on the picture there that I've got of a 3-story home, what's actually underneath? Is it just carport and storage, or what is it?
Carport, man shed and laundry, utility areas, but we put the power points higher because that's at Nudgee Beach and gets localised flooding.
Right, okay.
So therefore we didn't want to have a situation where the water coming in didn't cause any problems. So all the materials used on that was external materials internally. So it didn't matter how many times it got wet, there was nothing to dry out.
That's right. So from a cost perspective, where you're looking at, say, the duplex here, but let's say just one of those, you know, one side, what sort of cost price are we looking at there?
Well, that one you're looking at was built a little while ago now. That was built for $185 each one. And he bought the block of land in Banyo, which is on the north side of Brisbane, very close to a railway line, as the crow flies, not far from Redcliffe, and from Brisbane probably about 8 or 9K. He was able to then rent those out at $450 a week each, so he was very happy with that, and his land content was based on him paying $350 for the cottage, so each block owed him about $175 plus the $180. At $185, and that was his total cost. Yeah.
So that's even converting something in somewhere like Brisbane, which is not renowned for being a high cash flow area to build, but even with that, it does nicely look after itself. So
yeah,
with that,
he was hoping of getting $350, and he got $450.
Yeah, that's very good, because they're nicely, as you can see, they're nice and modern and all the rest of it.
They do that well.
Yeah, they do.
Funky little fellas.
Funky little fellows, that's right. So, of course, a lot of my students are all about the cash flow. So whether these duplexes, and I always talk multis, whether we put a duplex, a triplex, a fourplex, or whatever we can get on there. Obviously, when you're talking about this style of model going on to a block where you can see they're clearly freestanding, the freestanding duplexes, triplexes, etc., always get a higher yield, a higher rent than if they're, common walls and, common garages, all of that kind of stuff. So regardless of whether we're talking in a built-up area like any of the major capital cities or whether we're talking in the regional areas, these will always get a higher yield than the ones that are butt up against each other. But, I mean, the real interest, I guess, for most of my investors particularly is high yield. And Kevin, I've just gone around and done a national tour talking about the mining areas and what's happening right across the country, whether it be in Queensland or WA or, from an up-and-coming perspective in New South Wales. I mean, they're the leaders in the mining fields. These types of developments and these types of construction start to become very, very lucrative. They start to become, something that everybody should be considering, particularly in the regional areas, because they, as you said, they're kind of more of a clipped-together kind of construction, whether they be on-site or, in fact, factory-built or mostly factory-built, which gives you the ability to be able to build them relatively cheaply in some of the mining areas. So your interest in design and economical design and low-cost living and you know, efficient design from an investor perspective, coupled with your background of land sales, has really created a huge opportunity for investors to get out there and start to put the two together for themselves.
Absolutely. I mean, the state government and the local government, called Logan City Council, has just signed off an agreement for us to now build 30 innovative homes for investment and other purposes on the M1 highway. That was signed off yesterday and is now allowing us to build 30 examples, which will be on show for the next couple of years.
So where is that happening?
That's called the Future Housing Expo, and I'm in sale mode with our builders now on that subject, and that's on the M1 highway going to the Gold Coast. So we've got 100,000 cars a day passing our doors. Mm-hmm. We'll have 3 learning centres, cafes, restaurants, things for kids to do, a big day out, but you get to see 30 examples of future of housing.